What is going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. In this video, we're talking about how immigrants to Canada are now thinking about leaving Canada because of the cost of living here. And then we're also going to dive in a little bit about the labor information, the jobs information that came out last week, how the job market is softening, right? Unemployment went up a little bit more than expected. So we're going to dive into that, as well as discuss how this affects mortgages and real estate and just what the future of the rest of this year looks like. Let's talk about the big problem in Canada. Many immigrants who came to the country for a better life are thinking about leaving because it's getting too expensive to live here, especially when it comes to housing. And I mean, you've probably heard this before. These are newer immigrants. These aren't even people that have been here for 30 years, 40 years. These are new to Canada immigrants. They're struggling, right? And I mean, it's really no surprise that they're struggling when most of all of Canada's struggling right now. A recent survey found that almost half of the immigrants who arrived in Canada in the last 5 years are considering moving to another country. The main reason, they obviously can't afford a place to live. Even rent is too unaffordable. Buying is obviously out of reach for them. Housing costs in Canada have gone through the roof. It's no doubt, right? So in big cities like Toronto and Vancouver, it's super hard to find an affordable home. Practically impossible to find an affordable home. And this is obviously even harder for newcomers when they're trying to just settle in and build a life here. The Canadian government wants to bring in a lot of new immigrants to help the economy grow, right? But if these people can't afford to stay, then it's going to cause big problems for the government's plans, right? Let's say you're like a young person, you just got married. Most people aren't even really thinking about having kids right now because it's too expensive to have a kid. And then it's also, where are they going to live if they can't buy a home? So if people in Canada, let's say that are born here 20, 30 years ago, aren't having kids, then that means people aren't replacing themselves. So that's where Canada, I think, got this idea. Okay, let's just bring in a bunch of people to help push up the numbers that get our population growing, because people aren't having kids as much here in Canada because cost of living is so high. So let's just supplement it by bringing in people. And I think that if these people come in and they see how unaffordable it is, they'll leave. And then what happens to the government's plan in that situation where they figure that if the immigrants don't stay and people aren't having kids, then what happens to the future of Canada? Right? It really throws a wrench in their plans. Now, some immigrants are looking at other countries where it might be easier to buy a home, right? The United States is definitely a popular choice, although it is getting a little bit more expensive. But a lot of people are just going back to their home countries. If it's cheaper to buy a house in their home country, maybe their economies are doing a little bit better than Canada's, then it's like, why wouldn't they want to go back? But you definitely got to think the government is not happy about this, right? And the government knows that we have to build more homes to make housing more affordable. It's no doubt we need more housing, we need more units, or else Canada might lose out on the benefits that immigrants bring to the country. And that's the thing. If we don't have the housing for immigrants or new Canadians or whatever, then that whole plan that the government had is just going to go out the window. And then what happens then? That's the big question. And so that's the situation right now when it comes to immigrants that are thinking about leaving. It's a big challenge, and I think it's going to require some big solutions to fix it. That's all I got to say about that. Now, in terms of the labor market, okay, Canada's job market cooled in June. We saw last week that the unemployment rate rose. Okay, it rose to 6.4%, right, across the country. So Canada's economy actually trimmed 1,400 jobs in June, the second time in 4 months. The labor rate has contracted as expectations of further central bank cuts later this year continue to grow. We learned about this information on Friday, that wage growth defied that slowdown, with permanent employees seeing wages rise at a clip of 5.6% last month. And so looking at this kind of information, the odds of a second consecutive rate cut by the Bank of Canada in July jumped as a result of the latest data, with traders and overnight swaps reportedly pricing the likelihood of a move to lower rates at about 66% compared to 55%. So that means that the likelihood of a cut is now a little bit better, right? And it's funny because the likelihood came down with the news that we had prior. Now it's going back up, right, because of the unemployment rate. So this stuff is all getting priced in right away. So this increase in national unemployment rate means it now sits at the highest level, excluding the one-off pandemic era, since October 2017. And we got Royal Bank Assistant Chief Economist Nathan Jansen saying that the prospect of a July central bank interest rate cut is certainly in play now. The odds are definitely higher, and that the Bank of Canada will surely be watching the next round of inflation data and their own business outlook survey closely ahead of the next interest rate decision later this month in July. These higher interest rates are definitely a factor, right? Companies aren't able to borrow money as cheaply, so they can't hire as many people. What we saw during the pandemic, 2020, 2021, companies were able to just expand and grow business operations, hire more people because they could borrow at near 0%, right? So as long as they could make some sort of profit on that, they were just hiring like crazy. Things are a lot different now. This could be a sign that the economy is slowing down. I feel like it definitely is. And this is definitely what the Bank of Canada is trying to achieve with this interest rate hikes, right? The Bank of Canada wanted to see these things happen in order to cool off the economy. And so for people looking for work, it might mean it's going to get a lot tougher to find a job. And for businesses, it might mean that they don't have to compete as hard to hire new employees. But at the same time, businesses are struggling where if they're not making, let's say, as much money or they can't expand enough, then it definitely affects how many people they can bring on, and that'll affect job numbers further on, let's say in the next few months. So this gives us a little bit of an idea of how Canada's economy is shaping up right now, and it definitely looks like it's cooling off, right? It's not as hot as it used to be, and then, with the amount of immigrants that have come to Canada, there's not as many new jobs for everyone to fill in. So it means that there's a lot more competition for every available position out there. And what that means is, let's say if someone's applying to jobs on LinkedIn, maybe they'll be applying to hundreds or thousands of jobs before they get one job. So it's going to probably make the unemployment rate raise further and further from here. And so we got immigrants wanting to leave Canada. We got the job market cooling down. This doesn't look good. Okay, I'll be honest. I'm just being straight up. This does not look good. What I personally believe will happen is the market will kind of be stagnant over the next year and a half. Because if interest rates go down very slowly, but at the same time, people are losing jobs and then people aren't finding jobs fast enough, and then let's say job openings decline, they keep declining, that's really going to affect the housing market. It's going to affect other markets. And then what that means is housing market will probably come down further. And for a lot of people, I think this is a good thing maybe because people think housing prices need to fall a lot in order for people to get into the market to just get the chance of getting their first condo, getting their first house, right? So this might be exactly what we need. Now we just have to wait and see what happens with all this information. And of course, I will keep you up to date on this channel. If you guys like this video, please like it, subscribe. It helps me push it to a new audience who might really enjoy the content. Of course, if you want to talk anything about mortgages, real estate, see what we qualify for, I will leave all my information down below for you guys to check out. And until the next video, guys, take care.